Revelations about the Trump campaign's meeting with a Russian lawyer last summer have again raised doubts about the evolving account of Donald Trump Jr., who attended that meeting on the promise of Kremlin-sourced dirt on Hillary Clinton. This morning, NBC News reported that there was a previously undisclosed person also in the room that day, Russian-American lobbyist Rinat Akhmetshin, former Soviet counterintelligence officer who's suspected by some U.S. officials of having ongoing ties to Russian intelligence. Akhmetshin denies any current ties to Russian spy agencies. However, Senator Chuck Grassley, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee and a Republican, noted in a letter to the Department of Homeland Security back in April, quote, that Mr. Rinat Akhmetshin has been accused of acting as an unregistered agent for Russian interests and apparently has ties to Russian intelligence. This brings the total number of participants in that meeting last year to at least 6. According to the New York Times, the 6th person there was a translator. This report comes after Donald Trump Jr. said on Tuesday that he had come clean and that there was nothing more to say.
I'm more than happy to be transparent about it, and I'm more than happy to cooperate with everyone.
So as far as you know, as far as this incident is concerned, this is all of it?
This is everything. This is everything.
Trump Jr.'s lawyer told NBC News this morning that he, quote, knew nothing about the man's background at the time of the meeting. And late today, Akhmetshin told Michael Isikoff of Yahoo News that he attended the meeting at Trump Tower without any security check. Quote, no one asked us for IDs. We literally walked in. Joining me now is Ken Delanian, investigative reporter with NBC News. Michael Isikoff is the chief investigative correspondent for Yahoo News. And Nayyirah Haque is a former senior advisor at the State Department. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Well, Ken, let me start with you. Former Soviet counterintelligence official suspected of having ongoing ties to Russian intelligence. This guy, Akhmetshin, what exactly can you tell us about him and the issue there of being suspected of connections to Russian intelligence in the present tense? Flesh that out for a little bit for us, if you will.
I will, Steve. It's important to know that to note that we don't know what the evidence is on that. We know that, as you pointed out there, Senator Grassley's office has made those allegations, but we have no idea what they're based on. I think the most important thing to know about him actually is that he's a classic Washington operator. He is Russian-born. He did spend some time in the Soviet military where he had a counterintelligence role, but he came to the U.S., became a U.S. citizen, and he's been an operator in the shadows in Washington for years, lobbying for various causes, some of which have to do with Russian Americans and Russians, and on behalf of the Putin government. On occasion, he's been on the other side of the Putin government. And, you know, he's an interesting guy who tends to do kind of political intelligence work and corporate intelligence work, generally in the shadows. And now, of course, he's exploded into public view in this meeting. And just in terms of why he was there, what we know about his role there. So he is a lobbyist right now, former counterintelligence of the Soviet Union, back when there was a Soviet Union, now a lobbyist, and he's there at the invitation of this Russian lawyer? Yeah, I mean, there's sort of two stories here. There's the story that Rinat, the lobbyist, and the lawyer are telling, and the Trump team, which is that this meeting was about these Magnitsky Act sanctions, that they came to meet with the Trump folks to lobby against these sanctions and give them maybe some information about some contributions to the DNC. And the Trump folks looked at it and said, this has nothing to do with the campaign. This is a nothing burger. That's their story. But that doesn't square with the emails that came from the Agalarov family, which, of course, had done business with the Trump family, had been involved in the Miss Universe pageant, had a deal to do a Trump Tower in Moscow that didn't come to fruition. But, you know, remember, we saw these emails where the Russian government was promising direct help for Donald Trump and promising derogatory information, and that's what this meeting was supposed to be about. So there's a huge disconnect between that and what they say happened in the meeting about this sort of pedantic, you know, Magnitsky Act that's very hard to understand. You know, intelligence officials raise this possibility that even if the folks who went to the meeting thought it was about these sanctions and the Magnitsky Act, what it may have been for Russian intelligence is a way to figure out whether they could get access to the Trump campaign. And the answer was yes. The Trump campaign was willing to take a meeting based on a promise of help.
Yeah, and Michael Isikoff, let me bring you in on that, because among all of the other details you have here, and you talked to this guy, Akhmetshin, I guess, today, is this. He showed up at Trump Tower, and that this is a guy, former Soviet counterintel official. He obviously attracted the suspicion of Chuck Grassley and others down in Washington. He showed up at Trump Tower for a meeting that included at the time the campaign chairman, and he was ushered in without showing an ID.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty astonishing. Listen, I caught him by cell phone. He was in the French southwest coast when I did this afternoon. You know, I wanted to zero in on that question because, you know, how did he get into this meeting? Why was he there? His account is he was dressed in a T-shirt and jeans and happened to be having lunch with Natalia, the lawyer who he had worked with lobbying against the Magnitsky Act. And she just happens to mention, oh, I got this meeting this afternoon at Trump Tower. Why don't you come along? I would have thought that to get cleared into Trump Tower to go see the campaign manager of the campaign, the son of the candidate, there would have been a record of who was going up to Trump Tower. Somebody would have had to have cleared you in, at least according to his account, Renat's account. Nothing of the kind took place. They just strolled back in. Nobody asked them for any ID whatsoever, and there he is, sitting with the highest levels of the Trump campaign. Now, you know, this might be exculpatory for the Trump campaign. It would explain how they didn't know he was there because there was no record of him being there, if this account is true. On the other hand, if one has a more sinister view of events or thinks this was part of an intelligence operation, it is a way by which people who might have other agendas could gain access to the highest levels of a presidential campaign.